Alan, thank you for coming, looking to your surprise presentation.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Daniel, for inviting. It is really fun and pleasure to see this many people at the conference and to see where SED has evolved, and also quite excited about the prospects and where we can. Okay. I'm usually loud enough, but nevertheless, it's good also to have some support. So, I said very excited also about the prospect, but also would like to present things a bit more from the, would call it like a neighboring perspective to SED and what is all happening in the world around, and then try to give you some outlook and views on the way as I see things going forward. And views expressed in the presentation are personal views, not views of my company. And the latest company is still in a stealth mode. And before this company have been with Ericsson a couple of years in voice over IP space since '96. Started also contributing to open source, so some of the Slackware audio driver used to have my code here, and worked on a standardization of VoIP in a number of standardization bodies in ETSI, ITU, and at IETF for a number of years. Also was one of the first engineers at Global IP Sound, which has been sold to Google a couple of years ago, and as I guess most of you know, quite a bit of a framework that we developed at Global IP Sound ended up being a parts of WebRTC that I hope many of you is using today, especially the codecs part. And ILBC codec, I call my baby, and that was the codec that I've been involved from its inception, from idea to a number of other stages. After Global IP Sound have been founding company called Kamailio, that is operator with now roughly 450,000 subscribers, predominantly Norway, also in Denmark, Switzerland, and Netherlands. And Kamailio, in a nutshell, is a stock-listed company that has returned now through dividends magnitude more money than it has been raised from its shareholders and investors, and it accounts now roughly for a 200 million euros revenue, 400 something employees after acquisition of Nexentel, and of course with the debt side it became less interesting for me, so that's why it was needed to start a new company. And also during the time of Kamailio co-founded company called Sonorit or Camino Networks that after 9 months has been acquired by Skype, and Skype is still today using codecs that were developed by that company. So that's a bit of a background for some of the data that will be coming afterwards, so that I hope it gives you a bit more confidence behind it. So on the agenda, we'll talk a bit about real-time communications in 2014. Then we'll address some of the considerations when building real-time communication solutions, and then talk a bit on the WebRTC and Kamailio's role in this world as I see it. So, thing which is interesting to say for 2014 and real-time communications, it is a big numbers game, but not technically, but financially, because what happened in a month, like 14th of February, Viber sells for $900 million to Rakuten. Tiny revenues, they just started making some revenues with the stickers, and still no fundamentals behind the evaluation. However, huge subscriber base, very active subscriber base, and also undoubtedly quite a big potential behind it. What Rakuten is going to use it for, it is going to be interesting to see some first information that has been available points to their usage in e-commerce. I'm a bit skeptic how it can be well used in e-commerce, and I'm skeptical there because of the history. As you know, eBay bought Skype, and they thought they are going to be using it to increase their sales, and then they figure out that buyers don't want to talk to sellers and that email is good. But luckily, Skype was still excellent investment for eBay because afterwards it was sold to Silver Lake, and they still kept part of a stake in Skype, and then when it was sold eventually to Microsoft, eBay ending up making some nice money with it, even if it was from the book's perspective written off already. And another fascinating deal, WhatsApp, 19 billion. Amount is just staggering, and if fundamentals are behind it, I'm not sure. But if the amount is good, and if it is a good news for every one of us here in this room, yes, it is. It's amazing news, because finally there is put up quite a good validation on the work that we do. Because for a number of years, evaluation in the companies in our space was not that great. Skype managed to break that barrier, but then there came a crisis, and then for a number of years, companies in our space, including Kamailio, were trading at 3 times their earnings value, which is ridiculous. So we are going from one extreme to another. And it is a nice feeling to be on this side of the business at this point of time. Evaluation-wise, and why it makes sense for Facebook, we can speculate a lot. From my perspective, Facebook is getting magnitude stronger footprint in a mobile space. Their heritage is from web. They started moving into the mobile space, and other interesting fact with the WhatsApp is their demographics, which also arguably nicely fits within the Facebook profile and reach. WhatsApp was present in a number of markets where Facebook was not present. And also, if you look from a demographics perspective, loads of younger generation that started leaving Facebook is on WhatsApp. There is, of course, a number of concerns with this acquisition because those are two totally different worlds. Facebook lives out of advertisements. WhatsApp hates advertisements, and it's going to be interesting to see how this develops. One thing which is interesting is today on Mashable you can see a press release where Facebook is talking more about voice on Messenger, and will start now pushing voice on a Messenger more. And also there is a number of speculations and even some news that during Q2 there is expected for a WhatsApp to include real-time voice. Moving further, another deal at also amazing evaluation, Tango valued at more than 1 billion. Alibaba invests in it. Again, aspirations to use Tango for something what it is not. Similar as we said with the Viber, they are planning to use it more for the upsell of the games and some of the other products. So what is interesting is to see that there is an obvious business model shift in those cases, because none of them is making money on minutes of traffic or percent messages, as it has been the case with the real-time communications so far. Of course, it is interesting also to look a bit on the business model from the WhatsApp side, which they had, where they were charging $1 or a similar amount per year for installed application, with the first year being free. That model, I think, is also quite nice when you have a lean company and when you can have still $20 million plus per year, as those guys had for 2012 and 2013, according to undisclosed sources. And what will this turn into? We can speculate a lot. They can turn into MySpace, which is not much, or even worse, they can turn into a Terra Lycos shit, which started with 12 billion evaluation, and by the time that transaction was closed, for those of you that are old enough as me, that was during the dot-com bubble. In 2000, this evaluation dropped down from 12 to 4 billion by the time the transaction was closed, and soon after that, it was pretty much nothing. However, there are also cases like a PayPal that are now magnitudes more worth than hundreds of millions or even 1.5 billion what eBay paid for them. And according to a number of sources, they account PayPal for roughly more than a third or even a half of the eBay's market cap. And eBay's market cap today is roughly $70 billion. So it's spectacular return of investment. And time will show what will happen with these three cases. There may be another PayPal among them, and I'm sure there will be another Lycos or MySpace out of those three. So some of the considerations when building RTC solutions. We need to look always macro perspective, because we can have the best product in the world from design perspective, from technology perspective, but if timing is not right, we run out of money and things go bust. And as we know, 7 out of 10 startups go bust, and then 2 out of 3 of those that make it stay small and mediocre. So very, very few succeed, and one of the most important things there is timing. So when you're entering into this space, timing is essential, and especially then with a specific product that's going to be done within the RTC space. Thing which is obvious is that smartphones have been here, game changer. They liberalized distribution and market. So basically anyone can make application and earn quite good money on it. And as James was just talking during the break, we are getting out of the world where you need to pay a couple of £100,000 for a change request to Ericsson, Alcatel, Siemens, or other companies. Those times are slowly fading away. Other thing there which is extremely important is this rise of LTE, despite that it has been quite doubtful its future just 5 years ago, when there was a lots of speculations that WiMAX is going to eat it up and that it's never going to work. It works quite nice. It's getting quite good coverage around Europe, and what is important with it, it is finally reverticalizing real-time communications space completely, because now we are having IP end-to-end, and with the rise of LTE, we also have a decline of a circuit switch communications as we know them for the last 100 of years. Other thing which is also extremely important is that arbitrage business is going away. So we cannot count on a solution which is just selling cheaper minutes or a cheaper number of messages or cheaper bundles. We need really to think how to have those applications rich. And also, as you could see, the European Parliament voted that even roaming charges, which were the final bastion of arbitrage business, by 2016 they are going away. Of course, we can argue that there is still quite some money to be made within this space, and for all of those companies that are based within this space, they're still going to be making nice money, but they need to evolve. Otherwise, they are going to become Blackberries of this era, or even worse cases. Other thing also which is quite exciting and which personally excites me a lot is the rise of the sensors, and sensors are intersecting with the real-time communications. Within this space, there's going to be driven quite much innovation, and I fully believe that platforms that are really good platforms for real-time communications are also amazing platforms to harvest on sensors growth. Because scaling issues are pretty much the same as if you would have a messaging application or a voice application. Considerations related to security are exactly the same. Considerations related to privacy are exactly the same, and a number of other considerations that we can talk about. So a number of those use cases that I like to split in a productivity cases and a well-being cases are improving our lives, and real-time communications has fantastic role in intersecting with this. Other thing which is important to pay attention on is selfie generation. So users that we are building systems for are not the same users as us. There is a lot about me, broadcasting me, photos, publishing me, commenting me, distributing the central quasi-authorities, and dispersing their importance onto those, we can call it architecture atoms, and as well the meaning of a content is changing quite a lot with this generation. Content will always have the value, just the content that has value for those guys, it's not necessarily the same content as the content that our parents consume and like, and even that we consume and like. Presence. With this one, I'm a little bit boring because this is pretty much the same slide that I put last year. So just last year it was 17 years old, now it's 18 years old, it's adult, it's still fully broken. Major rework needed, it needs to be automatized, because if I need to change my presence in Skype from busy to available, etc., manually, it ends up with case scenarios that it shows busy when you are not busy, and that shows that you are somewhere else when you are not there, etc. So completely broken. Then what we need to make sure is that as we can improve this presence with all of the sensors that mobile devices have, and by the fact that we are pretty much 100% of the time while we are awake and even when we sleep close to those devices, it implies the privacy aspects, so we also need to be careful how we build those solutions and how we put all of the opt-in and opt-out cases on when it should show certain location, when it should not, or when it should show certain activity and when it should not show it, etc. So this is something where there is some improvement visible. So for instance, with a Viber, you can see when a message has been delivered and when it has been read, though again we can argue if we want to disclose that information back to the side that sent the message. Personally, I find it quite useful, and for pretty much all of my personal communications, I find it useful. Other also interesting thing there is that you've seen now for a number of years with WhatsApp, Viber and others is they have information when you were last time using application, so that you know if there is a chance that when you send a message that other person is going to reply, and then something that has been in a communications world now for at least I think 15 almost 20 years, and it has a patent from Microsoft side is typing. That is also quite nice and useful indicator. And for those of you that are implementing something similar, make sure not to use exactly the same phrase, is typing, because then you are breaching their patent. But if you rename it or if you tweak it a little bit, you can nicely navigate around it. Metrics that are important when building these kind of solutions. Another staggering fact, beside this 19 billion, it's also 64 billion messages per day. 19 billion sent messages, and if you look other metrics there, 600 million photos uploaded per day, 450 million users, 200 million voice messages sent per day, 100 million video messages sent per day. It all points to scaling. Our systems need to scale beyond the limits that we know as of today, because 64 billion messages, it's roughly whole world's SMS traffic. And they're going to surpass it, because, unless Facebook messes it up, small caveat, because last year this number of messages was in a range of 30 billion. And what this gives you is like it's, as a technologist, I'm thinking how many requests per second it is. It's 752,000 messages per second. And then depending on how you set up your architecture, you're going to have at least that many requests per second hitting your backend. It's quite huge difference compared to what we are used to. Of course, solutions don't need to be built from day one to deal with this capacity, but the grounds for it need to be there, because with the time you'll be evolving it, but trying to deploy now backend which is incapable of automatically spinning new instances as the number of subscribers is growing, as the number of messages are growing, is not a good idea. And then, as friend Richard Shockey says, and Richard is quite known in ITF world technologist, but he always says, answer is money, what was the question? So here when we look from a money perspective, 19 billion messages outgoing with an average price of 1.1 cent per message, 200 million US dollars per day is shifting away from telecom providers' pockets. And it's day by day, and it's not slowing, it's increasing this pace. So when building application, as mentioned, this arbitrage case, we cannot rely on it anymore. Other metrics that you need to look is how much people use your application during the day. And one thing which is interesting is like with a Tinder, one of the fastest growing applications on the net, they have a 300 million swipes per day. So people that use that application use it quite a bit. Security, privacy, we live in a very special area. So some of the considerations there that I cannot stress enough is make sure to use TLS, make sure when using TLS that certificates that you are using and who do you trust there is not too naive. Man-in-the-middle attacks are possible to do with a number of existing large solutions that are available there. Encrypt media. There is no reason why you should not be using SRTP and there use DTLS for a key exchange. Treat your customers well. If you're sending any data about the stuff, what they are using, it's going to get out and it's going to hit you back. So have proper opt-in, opt-out policies and make sure not to hide it within end users' license agreements, and consider using safe harbors for your data. Business impact side, as we are running out of time, pretty much all of this has been addressed now. It is important to think about the new business model and the new partnerships. Also there, what is amazing is with incumbents that they still didn't start harvesting on all of the data which they have, on identity which they have, etc. So profits are not the only measure and target for the stuff that you will buy. You've seen with WhatsApp, if you have an amazing product that has a truly global reach that is really appealing to the customer, it will get its evaluation. WebRTC and Kamailio, in a one sentence, I wish it to become Apaches of the RTC space. Apache and Nginx represent 70 to 80% of all of the active or most active million websites around the world. And also I see there WebRTC as enabler and Kamailio having the same potential as we are shifting all of this billions and trillions of minutes of voice traffic from the circuit switch to the packet switch. Thank you.
Questions? Questions from audience? One of my questions, just to start, is I mean, WhatsApp, yes, I agree, it was special. They were never on loss, but Viber and many others, including Skype, they were never like on profit. And I understand that we should not really targeting primarily to get the profit from the days one, but you cannot really live long time without getting money. So either you have big support from some venture capitalists, or you need to focus some time on getting profit, not just running after users and users. That's nice. I would like to just do it running after users, but at the end of the day, so what would be like solutions in this one? How to approach and go in between, because not everyone has access to big funds, and especially in Europe, is not like in US where, let's say, venture capitalists are more open than.
Yeah, thanks, Daniel, because this is one of the keys that I missed during the point, one of the key points that I missed that I had on a paper. So basically key is there in a lean company. You need to run it really lean with a minimal cost, regardless of the money which you earn, which you get from the venture capitalist or a private equity or angels or your own money and friends and family money. Because there, it's not a question if you're going to run out of it or if you're going to be in a squeeze. It's just a question when you're going to be in a squeeze. And you can also see with the Facebook that on a high level had loads of money to burn, and they've been spending quite a bit of the money until they became what they are, and they still have a bit road ahead to justify their valuation, though they are pretty much on the right track. But with the Facebook, one of the interesting facts is it's one DevOps engineers per 10 million customers. One DevOps engineer there. So automating everything, making your code good right from the start, doing test-driven development, continuous integration, having small increments in the builds, getting those builds fastly out, not doing the waterfall model, not even doing the agile model. The agile is already becoming a bit outdated for this lean startup concept. This is the key, and all of those things you need to put them together. Testing and development, continuous integration.
Yeah, I was looking for some faces here because we discussed yesterday, so we have to push a bit more pressure on those people looking at doing continuous integration in our environment.
Yeah, but it is still a fantastic step forward. I heard that it's 130 people contributing to it, and that's what makes me happy.
Okay, so other questions, or we go for the next talk and prepare for dangerous demo? Last questions, or okay?
Alan, you've been in the SIP area since we created SIP. SIP is 12 years old. What do you think about the position of the SIP protocol today?
So, SIP is basically Apache 6-7 years ago. It will now grow, or actually more than 6-7, more like 10 years ago, Apache. It will grow now fantastically well, but there will not be too many exciting things coming out of it. So it is becoming de facto tool. And there, I think if you are looking, as I know you are, for a new cool stuff, knowing you for quite some time, then it is a web RTC space, which is interesting. And then this cohabitus of a SIP and web RTC services where I think we haven't seen more than a tip of the iceberg.
Okay, thank you. So, SIP like probably web 10 years ago, and we have to hook it up to the web today and grow together.
Exactly. And security there.
Thank you, Alan. Thank you very much.
Thanks,